Hi, welcome to this lecture on IT business alignment as well as business process reengineering. So we start with IT business alignment and then we'll look at business process reengineering. So what is IT business alignment? One of the definitions of IT business alignment is allocation of IT budget such that business functions are supported in an optimal way. So basically, IT business alignment is about making sure that whatever is being done in the IT department supports the business goals in every possible way. So we are trying to align or to make sure that the IT strategy complements and aligns with the corporate strategy so that all the activities in the IT department are helping to achieve the goals and objectives of the business in terms of its corporate strategy. So one of the reasons why we require activeness alignment is to make sure that our investments can be delivered on time and also they can deliver the right service for the organization, as well as to make sure that due to the various changes that are occurring in the operating environment, we are always up to date to what the business needs, and therefore, as IT, we can get ourselves to be able to deliver a service that is relevant to the needs of the business at that particular moment in time. So you will find that in IT business alignment, there will be now need to make sure that the business processes that are being supported by IT are actually delivering value to the business at large. And some of the business processes that are facilitated by IT could be, for example, in the context of a government and an e-government system, the issuance of a driving license, registration of a company, audit, and release of a grant. So this may seem like a small application that can be developed. But behind the scenes, there are a lot of processes and a lot of people that are involved. And we have to make sure that as IT, as we facilitate these processes, we also make sure that these processes are adding value to the organization overall. So why do we have to focus on IT business alignment in today's business world? One of the reasons is because we need to make sure that we can take advantage of and mitigate the effects of globalization. So, because now our markets can be anywhere in the world and we're not limited by geographical locations, we can actually tap into markets that are elsewhere as well as lose potential markets to our competitors in the global world. So we have to make sure that our customers are happy, our partners and suppliers are always delivering the good service, and we are also giving them the service that they require, as well as making sure that our competition does not overtake us or take over our markets. We also need to make sure that we are always connected to our value chains. So IT helps in making sure that we can connect to various service providers, supply chains, and customers all over the world in the in a split second. So that's the importance of IT business alignment as far as globalization is concerned. Then there's also the issue of transparency when it comes to business operations. So there could be regulations that require us to implement IT solutions that will help the business to show that they are compliant with certain industry regulations. There's also need to make sure that we please our customers by actually showing them how we either provide a service or deliver certain goods to them, as well as making sure that we are ahead of our competition in terms of providing quality service, both in terms of the processes as well as the products that we eventually deliver to our customers. So transparency is also making it key that IT helps the business to be uh, visible both to regulators and to customers at large. Then there's also the issue of service focus. IT helps businesses to differentiate themselves and to add shareholder value in the market. So, by making the customer or the service experience great, you can actually differentiate yourself through the use of IT. So, some processes where you may have required people to come in person, now they can actually just do it online or from the comfort of their own homes. Or in some instances where something could take 30 minutes for an individual to do, now they can do it in 2 minutes or in a split second because of IT. So we are making the customer experience even better, and in the process, making our service better, and that will lead to revenue increase or happier customers. Hence, IT is contributing in that way towards business satisfaction. So, in a nutshell, IT business alignment is about making sure that the IT strategy or the IT tools are contributing to the overall goals and objectives of the business. So if your business is focusing on profitability, you have to make sure that IT is also helping the business become profitable. Now, a big question to answer is IT business alignment an impossible thing to achieve? So you'll find that in most instances, IT business alignment will require a lot of effort from the whole organization to make sure that there is alignment at all times. There will be a lot of costs involved, a lot of consultations, a lot of back and forths, and a lot of probably industry regulators and compliance issues as well that may need to be taken care of. So yes, it's very possible to achieve IT business alignment, but it can actually be a very difficult um, thing to have generally. So I think it's something that you can research on and look at, is it possible to actually achieve IT business alignment for a business, and to what extent is it possible? So when it comes to the issues that have to be addressed between the business side and the IT side of the business, there is need to look at how investments are being made, such that are investments being made in such a way that they are prioritized in terms of business needs. So are IT investments being made so that we make sure that we meet the needs of the customer or the needs of the business at large? Our systems that IT is giving to people for service, are they actually delivering value to the business? Then it also, when it also comes to the business side, is the business actually being clear on the direction it is taking about its focus and its strategy, so that IT can understand exactly what the business is trying to achieve. There's also need for a collaborative approach when implementing certain changes in the business. So at times, IT can be neglected and may take a big banner when it comes to implementation or consultations or development of strategy. But when there is collaborative approach where there is a lot of consultation between the business side of things as well as the IT technical side of things, you'll find that there can be alignment that can be achieved that will help propel the overall objectives or the corporate strategy forward. So when all these issues are well taken care of between the business and the IT, and all of them are agreeing on that, then you'll find that there'll be a common representation of business activities and goals between the business side and the IT side, as well as a common and agreed view of how the um, IT infrastructure or IT services will be delivered to provide structured support to the business in this context. So the IT side will understand the business goals and activities, whilst the business side will understand how IT is going to provide them with support to achieve all their business goals. So that's all we can say about IT business alignment for now. Now let's move to business process reengineering. So business process reengineering is basically looking at coming up with new processes, or getting rid of old processes and coming up with new ones, or improving the processes that are already there. So some of the definitions of business process reengineering include search for and implementation of radical change in business processes to achieve breakthrough results. So some of the reasons why we'd have to do a reengineering of our processes is because we need to make some big changes to achieve big results as well. Another definition could be the analysis and redesign of workflow and processes within and between organizations. So we are at times just important for you to just sit down and ask ourselves, are the processes that we're currently using the best that we can have? So if you analyze those processes, you may start to find some weaknesses or some shortcomings on them. And then from there, you can start redesigning and coming up with newer and better processes. Business process reengineering can also be done because you want to improve certain areas. For example, you may want to cut on costs, you want to improve quality, you want better service, and you want to increase speed and efficiency. So you can engage in BPR, which is business process reengineering in short. So you can engage in BPR to achieve a specific result at any given time that you choose. So business process reengineering can also be known as business process redesign, business transformation, process innovation, business reinvention, and change integration. So when we are now doing this business process reengineering activity, we start from with what we want to have in the future. And then based on our vision and what we see in the future, we then work backwards and start improving what we have to suit what we want to have in the future. Given that, then it means that BPR is about innovation. It's about improving what we have, coming up with better ways of doing things, and radically getting bigger results than what we currently have at the moment. So why do we need to engage in BPR? So you find that when a business starts, usually it has got a small complement of staff. It's got very short or very small and less complicated processes, and as a result, it's working fine. But as it grows and more people come on board, more stakeholders are involved, and more processes become complex, there is now need for us to relook at our processes and come up with newer ones or to improve the current ones we have. So you'll find that there'll be addition of sub processes as the business grows. There'll be changes in the operating environment that will need us to also change our processes. We have an increase in customers as well as their expectations, and therefore we may need to change how we do things to make sure that we achieve things that satisfy our customers. Then also the increase in volumes, both in customers, in the products that we produce, as well as the requirements or regulatory issues that we may start to face in our operations. So all these are reasons why we may need to also reinvent our processes. We may also have reasons to do with technology, where our current processes or techniques are now lagging behind the current technologies that are in existence. So we need to take advantage of those technologies, and hence we also need to change our processes. We may also find that there may be bottlenecks in our processes, and we may now need to take advantage of what we now know or have to remove those bottlenecks, which is the problem of the stovepipe. Then we may also need to integrate our systems and remove fragmented piecemeal systems, which may actually be duplicating work or delaying the processing of certain information. And also, at times, we just engage in BPR just to improve and gain efficiency in our organizational activities. So, how do we know that these processes may need to be re-engineered? So if you look at how you're doing your work in your organization, for you to be able to identify whether you need business process re-engineering, there could be some symptoms of poor processes that you cannot. For example, you could find that there's a lot of information exchange that is happening. There is no centralization of information. The same information can be captured more than once in different systems, and that in itself can either cause delays or can cause lack of integrity of our information. Then you could, as if you are a producer of a certain product, you could be having huge inventory, and this could actually be working against you in terms of generating a lot of revenue, where you're supposed to be selling more instead of storing more in your warehouses. Then you may also have too many controls and checks. So you may find that instead of something taking probably a day to be completed, it may end up taking 7 days because of bureaucracy, too many signatures required, too many processes, too many meetings, and the like. Then there's also the issue of duplication of work or doing the work twice, as well as continually iterating over the same thing. So there may be need to actually re-engineer your process and get rid of all that rework, that iteration, as well as that duplication. Then also, if processes become too complex for even your own employees to understand them, and there are too many exceptions where you're now ruling or leading by exception instead of actually following certain procedures, then there may be need for you to actually re-engineer your processes. So when you do engage in BPR, there are certain changes that will occur in your organization. Some of these changes include some jobs will be combined into one. So some roles um, will be eliminated, while others are actually taking over those roles that were being eliminated. There may actually be changes in the decision-making process where employees now can make decisions of certain things, thereby fast-tracking certain processes. You may find that some of the steps that you followed in the business in your business process may now change because you've actually made a re-engineering or a radical change in how you do your business. They may also end up having one process but with multiple versions, and you may find that work now is being done where it makes sense the most. So you may remove something that was being done in one department from, or for example, sales, and put it in marketing because you may say sales are supposed to focus on being with the customers, and marketing can take over this because they work with it better. Then you may also find that some controls and checks may be minimized because now you've realized that you want to improve your processes and therefore there's no need for you to have a lot of bureaucracy. You may also realize that, or you may also end up having a centralized or decentralized operations depending on how you work. So if there are systems, you could have a centralized database. If it's operations, you could have decentralized operations. For example, a service desk, you could have one in someone in a certain region serving people who are close to him and other people in another region to serve them as well, so that you delay the time you take to deliver a certain service. Other changes also include work units change. So you may have certain departments being eliminated or certain departments being created, new jobs being created and other jobs being taken away. People's roles change in the organization, which may also mean that there could be job losses in the process. So some people may actually end up being promoted while others are being retrenched. Um, the types of KPIs or key performance indicators that are used to measure performance may change, and also the amount of money that a person earns may also change. Then the way a person advances in career may change, because if you were focusing on databases and all of a sudden you are moved to systems administration, then that can affect how you move in your career. The values of the organization can also change. The organizational structures can change, as well as the executives of the organization can change. So these are the changes that can occur as a result of business process reengineering. So when we are now doing this reengineering, how do we know that we are actually doing a process reengineering instead of just probably automating a system? So we have to know that reengineering is not automation of existing ineffective processing. So when you're simply just automating an existing process, that's not engineering. All you're doing is taking what has been done manually and turning it into an automated process. That you have not re-engineered anything or changed anything. Re-engineering now is where you actually take that manual process, change it, and then automate it. That's re-engineering. Re-engineering is also not the sophisticated computerization of obsolete processes. No matter how much you throw at how much sophisticated technology you throw at an obsolete process, if a process is bad or it's wrong, it will always be wrong, even with the best technologies. Then reengineering is also not just simply playing with organizational structure. So you may end up having fewer managers or more managers, and but if you're still having the same type of approvals in the same in that organizational structure, then you have not changed any of your processes. Also, downsizing is not necessarily re-engineering, because you are simply doing the same thing but just with less people. So you also need to be wary of these things to say, am I doing reengineering, or am I just taking what's already there and changing the platform on which it's being done? Otherwise, we are still doing the same thing. Okay, so let's look at the basic principles of business process reengineering. The first one is organize around outcomes, not tasks. So when you're coming up with your business processes, make sure that it's the outcome that you're focused on and not the tasks. So as you do your reengineering, the results are more important than the steps themselves. Then secondly, identify all the processes in your organization and prioritize them in order of redesign agencies. So there are some processes that could be causing a lot of problems for you or causing a lot of delays in the business. So these may be prioritized as very urgent and needing redesign. So make sure you know all your processes and then you can prioritize them in order of redesign agency. Then also make sure that where information needs to be processed, it needs to be processed where it's actually produced. That way, there's no need for people to do the same work twice in order to achieve just one result. Also, there's need for you to centralize as many things as possible, even though the people who use that information or those resources are dispersed geographically. So make sure that if it's databases or information, it's centralized. If it's approvals, they are centralized so that there is less need for a lot of steps in achieving your goals. Then the fifth principle is to make sure that if there are any parallel activities in the workflow, where possible, make sure that all those parallel activities are linked so that they are done either in one place or by one person, and they also lead to the same result. Also, when it comes to decision making, make sure that decisions are made where the work is done, so you can give your employees more decision making power so that they can do they can make all those decisions so that we can shorten or increase efficiency in our processes. What you know then have to do is to make sure that they're making the right decisions, is to put in control measures that will make sure that at any one time, if there are any exceptions that may be required, the employees will know them and then they'll bring them up to management. Then the seventh principle is capture information once and at the source. So there's need to avoid duplication of information and duplication of work. So in carrying out your business process reengineering, here are 4 steps that you can follow. The first one is understand the current processes as they are, know where their shortcomings are, what are their causes of inefficiency, etc. Then the second one, come up with the new processes as you would want them to be. So there is knowing what you have and knowing what you want. And then thirdly, you start constructing new processes that can get you to where you want. And fourthly, you don't need to get people in your organization to buy into those processes and to work or implement those processes. And that's where change management and communication strategies come into play. So when doing this process reengineering, one of the strategies you could implement include doing stakeholder assessments to make sure you know the people involved in the processes, determining which stakeholder expectations are to be met and which are not. So there will be need for some trade-offs there to make sure that you can implement processes that are possible for you, as well as that antagonize as few people as possible. Then you also need to determine how you're going to redesign, retool, or reconstruct the various processes to meet your expectations. And then you need to map out the IT solutions that you're going to implement and see if you already have them in your organization, or you may need to buy or acquire those IT solutions. So these IT solutions could involve processes themselves, governance issues, infrastructure, or even the human resource aspects as well. Then after you've done that, you can also look at how you can develop and implement the various new processes. Now let's look at some of the challenges that you can face during your business process reengineering exercise. So some of the challenges include identifying customer needs and performance problems in the current processes. How do you know what are the needs of your customer and the problems that you're facing performance-wise in your current processes? Some of the challenges also include reassessing the strategic goals of the organization. So, in also re-engineering your processes, at times it may actually need you to relook at your strategy, at what you're doing as an organization. Because at times, probably your processes may not be a problem, but your strategy would be. Then there's also the issue of defining the opportunities for re-engineering. Where and how do you re-engineer? How do you know that this part requires re-engineering? So those are some of the issues as well. Managing the process and controlling risk as well as maximizing benefits are also challenges that come with business process re-engineering, and which can also mean the success of or the failure of that whole process. And there's also the issue of managing organizational changes and implementing the re-engineered processes. So these processes, when implemented, they will come with changes to the whole organization. So there is now need for you to be able to manage those changes, because there'll be some people or customers who may not understand them, and there's need for you to take them through that whole phase until they understand and see the direction in which you're going. So some of the reasons now why business process engineering activities fail include trying to fix a process instead of changing it. So instead of just changing the whole process, you want to fix it. Lack of focus on business critical processes. You're not taking a holistic approach where you look at the whole business. You're also not willing to settle for minor results, but you want to radically change everything. Quitting too early as well, where you don't see results soon enough and you think it's not working. Limiting the scope of the BPR by existing constraints. So at times you need to really require that radical thought process and go beyond the current limitations that you see in your business. Then there's also the dominance of the existing corporate culture, where people are not willing to leave what they have already been doing and want to continue perpetuating the status quo. Then there's also the issue of adopting the bottom-up approach, where decisions or basically people look at what we currently have and try to make decisions based on that, instead of looking at what is happening out there, what do our customers want, and how can we then adjust to suit that environment. So by first looking at what you have and not looking at what your customers want or stakeholders want, that can lead to failure in the business process reengineering process. Poor leadership and trying to make everyone happy is also a problem in business process reengineering. Also, taking the process too long can also lead to a failed business process reengineering activity, because if the process takes too long, by the time you are done with it, you may actually need to start re-engineering the processes that you have implemented. So it should not take too long. It should be done in a short space of time so that you can have time to test and see if those processes are actually working, and you can be able to improve from there. Now we have looked at what makes the BPR fail. Now let's look at what makes the BPR succeed. So the business process reengineering activities succeed when there's a clear vision for transformation and top management in the organization is committed to the process, where we clearly identify the core processes and the key processes that need to be re-engineered. We also put up an ambitious BPR team, and we have knowledge of re-engineering techniques, which is beyond this course. And we also engage external consultants, people who can actually have an independent view of our organization and who can tell us where we are actually failing. Then there's also tolerance of genuine failures. So we can look at actual failures that have occurred and we learn from them, and also change management. So if we do change management well, when we change our processes, everyone will be happy, everyone will be satisfied, and we'll be able to get the organization to continue achieving the same results as before. Thank you very much for listening to this lecture. Hope you learned a lot.